Hi, I'm Kathryn Lopez from National Review, and I'm here with Dr. Grazie Christie. Thank you for joining me. We are occasionally having these chats, and I enjoy doing it. It means, among other things, we get to talk, and I think other people enjoy it. We haven't talked since the Pope was elected last week, and I know you're as excited as I am.
Yes, I we were just talking before we started recording about how we were not in Rome, even though everyone else in the world seemed to be in Rome. But
So
maybe
there
we
was a
got
little fear of missing out.
yeah, there was a little more than a little on my side. It seemed, well, there were so many gorgeous scenes, like physically gorgeous
Yeah.
and orally gorgeous and liturgically gorgeous scenes
Mm.
that it would have been really wonderful to see with one's own eyes. But there were other things that people in Rome maybe didn't weren't able to appreciate. There was this wonderful drone footage of uh, Pope Francis's body being moved from the Vatican to Santa Maria Maggiore, I think.
Mm.
That was amazing. You feel like the eternity of Rome, right? And
Yeah.
then other things I think that we were able to see on TV that were very very moving. And now we have Pope Bob from Chicago. Very very odd. I know that you and I both, and maybe most people. I mean, to watch an American walk out on that balcony was I just it never occurred to me that that would happen. Never occurred to me, and the amount of the number of interesting things that happen because we have an American Pope are just now starting to show themselves, right? Like silly things, like he has a Costco membership. That's very strange, and he has a LinkedIn profile, and and he's reposted people I know on Twitter. And I don't know, he just seems like such an everyman. And at the same time, not an everyman. He's erudite and polyglot and holy and obviously a man that hasn't lived for himself in as maybe since childhood. I mean, somebody who has completely lived for others. Like he really exemplifies the Christian ethos, like Christ's ethos, right?
Yeah, I believe he was in the high school seminary. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, since
starting early
childhood.
on. Yeah.
Since childhood, he took his life and he gave it away. And we've seen how he's done this. We've as details of his biography have emerged. I've been in Peru in in places like Chiclayo. I mean, this is like Mother Teresa going to Calcutta. I mean, these are not places that are comfortable. This is rough. This is real poverty. The poverty of cold of cold feet and empty bellies.
Mm,
And it rains and your house gets washed away
mm.
and I mean, it's real poverty, and he went and met it and lived with it, and obviously loved the people love him. There's so much here.
Well, I've been moved by, in keeping with what you're saying, some of the pictures of him, just in the kitchen or at a site where, yeah, a house, multiple houses probably were swept away in some hurricane or whatever it was. You see him, with walking in water, then about knee deep and that kind of thing. And you get the impression like this is the opposite of clericalism, first of all.
Yes.
There's a level of clericalism that is something we respect and honor because you've given your
Mhm.
life to this. But then it can become you become a bureaucrat and entitled, and you don't get that sense from him at all. And the other thing I love about Leo the 14th, which is so weird to say, it sounds like something out of history, but here we are living history. I love his brothers. I love his brothers. I
Oh.
want to adopt John. He's the one who lives in Chicago. Then there's MAGA Florida man.
Is he
I think he's
which one
Lewis.
was the one who was on Piers Morgan? Who
That
was
was Florida. That's
okay.
Lewis,
Had
I
to
think is
be.
his name. Yeah, but John told a story. I wondered if he had media training because he's the one they found right away, and
Mhm.
the one who got the phone call from the Pope on his iPad with media in the living room or wherever he was. He told this beautiful story about playing mass as kids. Did you hear that one?
No, I didn't.
So he said that they used to take their mother's ironing board and play mass, and that Bob knew all the prayers in Latin, and they would tease him, and so the ironing board would be the altar, and they would tease him and say, "Why are you so holy? Why do you want to be holy? Do you want to be the Pope?"
No,
And now
that's
he's the
too
Pope. So
much.
when I heard that story, I'm like, this dude got media training. I mean, that story is like too good to be true. But no, I think the guy was just being himself. And there's something I think that over our lifetimes, certainly, I think that we've made an idol of, and I don't know if we did it or other people did it, and we received it and continued it, but we kind of made an idol of the papacy, even good ways and bad ways. Obviously John Paul II, there's so much to love and admire there, but I do remember when Benedict resigned, and same there. um Being actually, I can think of two friends of ours who later that day, it was a crazy day, but I had dinner with them fairly late in the day, after I think being on Fox News and a whole bunch of other things. And they were just in shock because, first of all, Pope doesn't resign, but there was something about the papacy and having a Pope that was, I don't know if it was a comfort, it was a sense of security. And now all of a sudden, like, a Pope resigns. It wasn't like we were prepared in a way for John Paul II dying because it was so prolonged and we saw that he was dying. Yeah, I do think there's something of a idol we've made. And even with Francis, they're the people who loved him and loved him for what they thought he was. They're the people who hated him. you know and there was also a hanging on the every word, right? Francis giving an interview on a plane, and it almost seemed like if he coughed the wrong way, people were interpreting it, and in all directions. At the end of the day, the Pope is a man. He is Peter, you know, but he's also a man who likes tennis, and
Let me
has brothers who maybe talk too much. And I think there's something, and grew up in Chicago, like your son can grow up to be Pope, it's a
let me
new
suggest
experience.
something. Let me suggest something because I'm thinking you're saying a couple different things, and I've been thinking about this. So when Pope Leo XIV walked out onto the balcony, my heart drew a complete blank because I never heard his name, and I'm just, and as the days have gone on and have gone by and I've heard more about him, all of a sudden I'm starting to feel this great affection for him in my heart. And I remembered that it was exactly the same way for when Pope Benedict became Pope. And here was a complete cipher to me. And I, the first thing I did was I went on Amazon and I bought his book, Truth and Tolerance, because at the time I was it was a time in my spiritual life where I was very concerned with how could one be truthful and hold tight to the truth, and at the same time, live in be tolerant to other people's opinions and other people's ways of life, which I think is a tension at the heart of the Christian life all the time, right?
Sure.
Because you have to hold on tight to the truth, but you live in a pluralistic world, and also sometimes you're wrong. Well, anyway, you understand what I'm saying or not?
Yes.
I bought that book. By the time I sort of finished it, because this is high philosophy and I can't follow a lot of it, so I'm not going to say that I really finished it. I was like, oh, I love this man. And so there is a sense in which, as Catholics, we're primed, we are ready to love our Pope, right?
Yeah.
He is our father. He's our shepherd. He's our main shepherd. He's the one that most closely models Jesus for us as the good shepherd, which are those are the mass readings we're reading every day these days of the good shepherd. And so it's very natural for us to feel orphaned when we have no Pope.
Yeah.
The Archbishop of Canterbury's office has been empty for months, and there's no hurry to fill it, as far as I can tell. Not that I'm keeping a real close eye on that, but I know that they're not, no one, no one in the Anglican Church is sitting around feeling orphaned.
Right.
So there is something really special about the Pope, about the Pope writ large, the papacy.
And also the
And
fact that not just Catholics, but
yes,
it seemed like the
exactly.
whole world was watching a chimney in Rome.
The whole world was watching a chimney in Rome. Everyone's hanging on just who's going to be Pope, who's going to be Pope. But this is the entire world
Yeah.
who can't possibly be affected in an emotional way the way we are as Catholics, in a spiritual way. And yet there it is. So I think that there are so many levels of this, of the importance of the papacy. We could talk about it for hours. I mean, that institutional, the fact that the church is the last great ancient institution that still hangs on, that has any relevance or any meaning. Because you could say, well, the British monarchy, for instance, is very old, but what's their relevance? Besides whether Harry and Meghan are, get their HRH titles or not, or whatever. Like, no, what's the relevance really?
Right.
I'm sorry to our British watchers who are feeling, who are thinking I'm ignorant, but here we, that's one level, right? The institutional strength and just the amazing presence of the church on earth, what it
And
means to so many people.
and the fact that even people who don't believe, who aren't Catholic
Yes.
or are fallen away Catholics, know there's something there that
Yes.
they want, that they need, that he understands. And
That
so
maybe,
there's
and that
this,
maybe even though they're atheists or they're Jews or they're Muslims, somehow the church is saving them from something.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
saving them from some sort of chaos that would exist in the world if the church wasn't there,
right,
or saving
right.
them from some disorder that would take over, right? Like, so the
Mhm,
church is this vanguard, is this bulwark, is something that,
mhm,
and the Pope is the leader of the church.
right.
He's that great shepherd. But then again, on the other hand, as you said, there is a kind of weird hero worship too, where we maybe we're laying on too many of our own personal uh, necessities or hangups, and we're laying them
Mhm, mhm.
on someone who is at the end a man, right? A very holy man, perhaps, but just a man.
And when we need to pray for.
Yes.
I love one of my favorite things in the world is going into some random church and encountering, frankly, usually Filipino ladies praying the rosary. There are others too, but there are always Filipino ladies. I think they're going to save the world. But at the beginning of the rosary, they pray for the Pope's intentions,
Mm-hmm.
or at the end of the rosary, and there is something powerful about that. And I actually, one of the things that kept me going during COVID was actually either staying up or waking up really early. My hours were bizarre because I couldn't go to mass and I wanted to go to mass with the Pope. So I was praying at the same time with the Pope, and there was something that spiritually kept me going and mentally, because of that sense of spiritual fatherhood. Um, and yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I think he appears to be an example of well integrated manhood.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he
um,
does. He
yeah,
does.
I mean, smart, like you said, sense of humor, seems to be able to relate to people well, even just how he's both naturally, and yet you can see the transition in him, as people are cheering for him and kissing his ring, and
You
the
can almost
first,
see it. You can almost see it penetrate him, right? Like this
yeah,
new
yeah,
relationship that he has with the world, with humanity,
yeah, like
and with
you
God.
see how he's understanding it's changing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got to be this incredible thing to remind yourself, this is about Christ, this is not about me. This is, for some people, I mean, I watch this sometimes with my bishop, Cardinal Dolan. When he goes around, there are people who feel like, all right, this is the closest I'm ever going to get to the Pope. And why do they want to get close to the Pope? Because that's the closest I'm ever going to get to Christ in this life.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
um and of course, I should be seeing Christ in you, you should be seeing Christ in me. But there's something about the institution and the office, that gives it this particular encounter. And actually, that Piers Morgan interview, the older brother on that actually talked about that. He talked about how he had been near Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump, and being, but also I think Benedict, I can't remember which, but he said being near a pope is something different. It's something unique. It's something powerful. And he's obviously going through a transition, with his little brother being pope. It's a beautiful time of renewal, I think, and it's beautiful to see. I was just at a doctor's appointment, and the doctor was telling me, I happened to know her outside of her helping me. Her mother just happened to be in St. Patrick's Cathedral when the announcement came,
Mm.
and the bells were ringing and people were all excited and everyone was talking about it. And she made a friend outside the cathedral, actually, someone her age, and they exchanged numbers and all. And it there was something that there is something that's bringing people together. The other day I was in an Uber going to a Catholic church, so it said St. Anthony's or whatever it was on the app, and so the driver asked me, "So are you Catholic? Tell me about the new pope."
Oh, that's
There's something,
wonderful.
and he wasn't Catholic. There's something unifying about it, which will I'm really excited, and it seems like so many people are, to see where it goes from here.
Maybe we'll see. We know we've been watching an uptick in conversions in general to
Right.
Catholicism. I wouldn't doubt that this spectacle of the end of one papacy and the beginning of another, and all the pomp and the circumstance and the liturgy and the sacredness and the amazing setting and the way everything's done so beautifully. I wouldn't doubt if that wakes up more hearts, because in the end it's beauty also, right? Like God is also beauty. God is truth, and God is love, but God is beauty. And we live in general in a world that has forgotten about beauty, a world that thinks that utility is more important than anything else, right? Like you got to get your bang for your buck, and a lot of parts of our spirit and our soul are being disregarded, like the needs of our spirit and soul. And one of those great needs is beauty. I mean,
Yeah.
other things too, like family and all sorts of other things. But beauty is one great need that we have as human beings, to remind us that there is a God, and that He loves us, and that He made us to be beautiful, to project beauty, right? To attract with beauty, all different kinds of beauty. I'm not just talking about physical beauty, but to lead with beauty, the beauty of someone who's reflecting the beautiful mind of God.
And it is something that this news story, centers around the Sistine Chapel, which is so
Yes,
beautiful.
yes.
And I can't. There was this really cool video of I think they were praying the Liturgy of the Hours. I'm not sure. But when the Cardinals first went into the Sistine Chapel and we were still allowed to see, Cardinal Pizzabella from Jerusalem was looking up, just like, wow. Because you're in the Sistine Chapel in a way that you're rarely going to be in the Sistine Chapel, and I think I would look up too, like that. Like, this is really cool.
I bet you many people haven't seen pictures of it or images of it since it was cleaned.
That's
A lot of
true.
people think of the Sistine Chapel and they imagine it sort of yellowy and cloudy and begrimed. And now
That's
the colors are vivid. I thought of that when I saw it on TV. I've seen it in person since it was clean, but on TV, the colors were so vivid and strong and
mm,
so dramatic, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh,
I feel
so
like God's dramatic, right? Like God's dramatic. He makes us this world where just it just blows your mind, the things that you can see in this world, whether it's the Grand
right.
Canyon or lava flowing down a mountain. I mean, everything's just drama and awe and grandeur. And and there you go. No less the Sistine Chapel.
And there's something about, the devil obviously wants to keep us from that beauty and that grandeur, but God is constantly calling us with that beauty, the sunset or whatever it is. You can always see it. if you're willing to open your eyes, you know.
And we crave it. We crave it, right?
We so crave it.
As soon as we feel disconnected, from God and from the good things in our lives, from the goodness in our hearts, and we're going down wrong paths, the first thing we look for is beauty. We want to feast our eyes on something that we know is higher and greater. And
Well, part
then
of the reason I wanted to talk to you about the Pope is because I want people, not only, obviously it's a news story and everybody's talking about it and we're curious to see what's going to happen and it's important, but also I hope that we all rise to the occasion. You know, if we're Catholics, like the two of us are, if we're Christian, if we're religious believers, and people are talking about faith, it's just a wonderful time to not like be distracted or too busy. The email right before we got on, the last email I was reading was from somebody who works at Magnificat, that monthly little magazine that has the readings for every day at mass, and meditations, often from saints. And actually, just the other day, there was, I think it was the day after he was elected, it was St. Augustine. And of course, Pope Leo the 14th is an Augustinian. And you almost thought, is this providential timing that we're reading St. Augustine today? But so Magnificat will give you, if you want, um, as many free copies as you want to hand out to people. And I often will have extra Magnificats in my bag. And sometimes at church, you know, sometimes a homeless person will come up to me and I'll be like, you know, give him something, talk a little and maybe give him a Magnificat. Sometimes I notice someone is searching for readings or something. So anyway, but I bring up Magnificat because it is beautiful. The pages are beautiful.
yes.
The artwork is beautiful, and you're getting the word of God. And there's something that, you know, with the frenzy of people talking about Rome, it's actually the word of God, like you were saying, the readings on the Good Shepherd. I mean, that's what we actually crave. And so, to whatever extent we can share, invite somebody to mass, whatever it is, I think that's part of what this moment calls for. It's not just like, oh yeah, did you hear the Pope's brother on the TV show? You know, that's
Well,
all.
and also a temptation that we have to fall into the political narrative, which
Oh
I think is
yes,
so wrong to
right.
try to put stamps on church matters like that. Like, this is right, that's left, this is conservative, that's progressive. It's not like that. Um, one of Pope Francis's, we talked about this last time we spoke. One of Pope Francis's um, Laudato Si, his encyclical on the environment, on God's creation, was like ripped to shreds from both sides of the political spectrum, but it was full of things that were so much higher than politics, that if we stick to the political stuff, we're going to miss. It's like looking at the trees instead of the forest, right? You're going to
Right.
miss the overarching meaning of the gospel.
Right,
Basically, you
right,
can't. Right? It's like looking at some scene from Jesus's life, and trying to reduce it, like trying to look at it with that sort of critical modern eye and say, well, here he was, thinking about the rights of women, and over there he was worried, thinking that the poor had precedence, and over here, like, no, it's much bigger and grander than that.
right.
And it's a window into the heart of God. And so we shouldn't be, trying to divide it all into little silos just because our minds are so siloed and our minds are so compartmentalized.
Well, and also because we feel sometimes like, all right, we've got too much drama in life. I can only deal with it if I put it in categories. You know, it's the
Yeah.
way it's almost a coping mechanism. So it's like you read Laudato Si and you put aside the Bonaventure, which is beautiful, and you decide either it's a climate change platform or it's, it has stupid air conditioning regulations. It's like, no, actually, there's more to talk about here. And the miracle, I think, of Leo the 14th is that, so technically he's an American, right? But has spent a lot of time outside of the United States. And yet, is obviously engaged. Like you mentioned, we know we have friends who he's retweeted. But at the same time, nobody can peg him as pro
Mhm.
MAGA or anti MAGA or conservative or liberal. It's like because there are hints of both, and there are hints that I loved the Guardian. I laughed out loud with the Guardian piece the day, I think it was the day after he was elected, maybe two, where it says, oh, he might be problematic on LGBT issues. Oh, so he thinks marriage is between men and women. Oh, like the Catholic Church does.
Yeah.
Okay.
It turns
So the
out
Pope
he
is
might be
Catholic.
Catholic.
Yeah, right. Breaking news. um but I do wonder if the fact that he seems, and I saw some people say he's center or in the middle. I don't think that's the case. I think you're dealing with an actual Catholic, you
An
know.
actual Catholic. That's exactly right.
Yeah, so he cares about the immigrant, and I'm not saying conservatives don't care about immigrants, but he like there's a priority on the human face, right? Because he's a priest, and,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
and he cares for the unborn and the elderly, and like so that would be considered maybe socially conservative and maybe liberal on other immigration, say. But I don't know that it's liberal to care about the immigrant, right?
No, not at all.
Part of the concern, and this is a whole nother conversation that we should have someday. Part of wanting to control the border is caring about these children who get divided from their parents, and where the hell are they?
Well,
These are human concerns.
the amount of suffering and human tragedy that took place because of that open border will never be measured.
No, no.
So
I
let's
think
and I'm talking about the people who were making the trek,
yeah,
who
yeah.
getting lost in Darien in Panama, being trafficked, raped, left for dead. I mean, we'll never know. We will
when
never
I
know the amount
start
of suffering.
when I start thinking about the number of children who are being trafficked because of our policies and our
Mm-hmm.
negligence, and I think both we don't have journalists courageous enough to try to follow that lead, but I don't even know if it's possible. When you talk about children who were lost in places we don't even want to go, which
Yeah,
is,
it
oh,
is
by
too
the
much
way,
for
why their
it's
parents
too
wanted
much
them
for
to
an
leave.
adult. Too
It's
much
too
for an adult to consider, and children are living it. But yeah,
right.
there are a lot of really bad things going on in the world that they have to be confronted forthrightly and courageously.
Right.
And and it's and sometimes you often have to break through these same walls and silos and compartments. And no, we're the ones who care about this and they care about that. No, I know that both sides. I know lots of people that I love who are on the left and progressives, and I know they care about the same things I care about.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, how do you achieve real progress towards a more flourishing?
Are
We
you
froze
still
for a
there?
moment.
Yeah, I
We
think
froze
we. I
back.
think we. Yeah.
There was a little
How
bit.
do we get people to truly flourish?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's not a matter of some people care about certain things and others care about others. We all care about the same things. The question is, how are we going to get there? And maybe this is a wonderful example we're going to see from Pope Leo XIV.
Yeah, and
Is
I do think you're right. I mean, there are radical ideologues on both sides who are just wrapped up in that.
Mhm.
But so many people actually do care, and we're a generous country, and I do wonder if there's something about him that can break through a little bit. And yeah, again, I think the best way to describe him is he appears to be a Catholic all the way around. It's pretty cool. And maybe
I
he'll
like his
inspire us to be such.
I like his old-fashioned vestments. I think it shows a kind of humility to just sort of assume the all the trappings of the general trappings of the Pope, to go back to the old apartment. I,
Mhm.
I find that I find him I feel like he's self-effacing also in that sense, in a
Mhm.
different way. Pope Francis was self-effacing also, but he has a different style of being self-effacing.
Right,
So we get
right,
so we get to have a different view of what self-effacement looks like.
right,
What's a good servant pope looks like, which in the end, he's modeling Christ to us.
right.
So we get a different view of how Christ might move in this world if he was amongst us right now.
Well, and that God creates people with different temperaments, and it's interesting that the two of them are both from the Americas, but very different,
Mhm.
as people tend to be. Well, Gracie, with that, I want to move on to talk just a little bit about right now as we speak. We may be closer than we've ever been to defunding Planned Parenthood,
Yeah.
which will be a great justice if it happens. And while talking about that too, I think we both want to talk about the abortion pill. And there have been two studies in the last week from the Ethics and Public Policy Center showing us both that the abortion pill harms women more than the FDA has let on, and that it also is ineffective more than we've been led to believe. And so, women who sometimes buy telehealth are getting abortion pills. And when I say women, sometimes we're talking about teenagers.
Mhm.
Um, they're it's a misery, and it involves death of your child, and any way you look at it in any scenario. But the fact of the matter is it's been rushed through. There's been deregulation, and women are not only going home and seeing the dead remains of their child, but sometimes it's not working, and sometimes it's doing them harm. And this is part of the story that hasn't been told. And it really, really is necessary for the Trump administration to move in and put back some of the regulations that were taken away.
The FDA, when they regulated the abortion pill, when it first came out, which was in the year 2000, is when it was first made available to the public. They had conducted a limited number of studies. I think something like 40,000 women strong, of 40,000 women who had used this pill. The women had used the pill under a certain set of circumstances, which included medical supervision, um, correct dating of the pregnancy with an ultrasound, see how far along the baby is, how big the baby is. They had allowed the pregnancy, they had only allowed it up to, I think, 10 weeks of pregnancy. The baby was only 10 weeks old. There was follow up with the same physician. The entire thing was supervised very intensely in these studies. In the year 2000, they released it to the American public under the same guidelines. So they put these measures around it called REMS, REMS. And these are the kinds of safety measures that are put around a certain number of drugs. There's many drugs that have these safety measures. One of them is thalidomide, for instance. There's certain drugs that have to be administered. Accutane has REMS. Accutane is a drug that if you take it when you're pregnant causes birth defects. So if a girl is taking Accutane for her acne, she has to have a certain amount of follow up to make sure that she doesn't get pregnant. Okay. So just to say, this was very appropriate what the FDA did. Fast forward to 2021 with the excuse of the COVID pandemic. There was a political push. The Biden administration pushed it through to have the FDA remove almost all these safety regulations so that the pills could be administered remotely via telehealth, online, etc. This is a disaster. This is a disaster for women. It has put women under. It's tremendously dangerous. So now you have the Ethics and Public Policy Center conducting a review, not of 40,000 women in 1999, but of over 700,000 women who've
Mhm.
gone through this process. Many of them after the REMS were taken away um, under the Biden administration because with the COVID excuse. And what they have found is a huge number of complications, which I, as a doctor, can completely understand, because one of the most important parts of one of the most important things that have to be determined before you take that pill is how pregnant are you and where's that baby. If you are over 13 weeks pregnant, you cannot take that pill. It's a very dangerous thing to do for the mother. And also it leads to a failed abortion, and then you need a surgical abortion follow-up, which is something you mentioned. The other thing is, where's the baby? If the baby is not inside the uterus, if the baby's ectopically located outside the uterus, the pill can kill the mother. So many of the deaths that we've had over 30 documented deaths in the United States because of this pill, of women, many hundreds of thousands of babies, of course, but the mothers died because the women had an ectopic pregnancy. The baby was not in the uterus. Other women died because the baby was too big to be aborted that way. And they ended up with an incomplete abortion, which led to sepsis and infection and overwhelming infection and death. So we're talking about such an injustice against American women and girls that it's difficult to wrap my head as a physician. It's very difficult to wrap my head around it, that we could have a drug of this magnitude with these effects, with such a death, with a toll. Well, we know there's a death toll associated with it. We already knew that many of the women who take it end up in the hospital hemorrhaging and with sepsis and need IV antibiotics. They need an emergency hysterectomy, all sorts of stuff. We knew this, and yet the FDA removed all the safety standards. And so now a 14-year-old girl can get online and have these pills delivered to her door. And she might be 20 weeks pregnant. She might have an ectopic pregnancy. There's nobody overlooking, nobody holding her hand, nobody making sure that she's not dying on the bathroom floor. So I'm sorry, these are ugly topics, but we, as a nation, we have to ask for better for the women and girls of our country. And let's talk about the moral hazard. When you have a company like Planned Parenthood, which God willing will be defunded soon, because to think that our tax monies are being used to do the things that Planned Parenthood does. I mean, it keeps you up at night if you stop and think about it.
Which includes gender transition.
Yes.
And live action just showed us that a 16-year-old can get hormones for gender transition from Planned Parenthood. But yeah, go on.
Yeah, so if you have a company like Planned Parenthood going around teaching young children in school, which they do, they teach them, if you get pregnant, it's no big deal because this pill is like a Tylenol. It's like taking a Tylenol. So you're increasing the moral hazard. You're reducing the stakes for young people, for women and girls. You're reducing the stakes in their heads, not for real, but you're reducing the stakes in their heads around sex, because this is something easily solved with a pill that works like Tylenol. So the number of girls and women that are becoming pregnant who think that a quick pill abortion is no big deal.
Right.
And then the number of babies that are being lost. Planned Parenthood released their numbers. I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I can't tell you what they are, but they released their numbers a few days ago, and there's been a sharp uptick in the number of abortions. I'm not surprised. Are you surprised?
No. And it's a whole nother conversation / debate, but we know that because, and probably Mary Eberstadt's the best writer on this, because of the introduction of oral contraception, the whole sexual revolution, people are more prone, and young people are more prone to risky behavior because not only do they think they're safe because of contraception, but then they have the backup of abortion. And now, as you're saying, abortion becomes so mainstream and so quiet. I mean, not only can you get it by mail, but when I'm getting my thyroid pills at CVS, there may be somebody in front of me getting abortion pills.
That's one of the things that what happened under the Biden administration.
Right.
They made it possible for pharmacists to distribute this pill.
So now, in one sense, I'm so grateful in New York here. We're the flagship Planned Parenthood in Manhattan is closing. But
that's good
why is
news.
it close? I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, but
But
why? But
why
yes,
is it
exactly why.
closing? Because we don't need abortion clinics anymore because you get a surgical abortion in most of the hospitals. We have no Catholic hospitals in Manhattan. You can get, all of as far as I know, all of the hospitals do abortions. Um, obviously like Calvary Hospital, that's there if your hospital is a specialty, obviously, that's different. But anyway, so hospitals, CVS, drugstores, and yeah, mail order. And in New York, we just had another instance that hit the news where a doctor in New York sent pills to a girl in Louisiana. That's happened in Texas. It happens more than we're gonna know.
Well,
And
they have shield laws now
mhm.
in some of these states. So if a doctor sends abortion pills to Florida, for instance, which is illegal in Florida, he'll be shielded in New York from
Right.
any repercussion against his terrible act. To take, for instance, a young girl's word that she's only 7 weeks pregnant. Every day, I do a lot of OB ultrasound. Every day, I do ultrasounds to check the age of the baby. And every day they tell me, they write on the sheet for me how far along the mother thinks she is. She's always wrong. Sometimes by a week, sometimes by 5 weeks. I've had women who are 13 weeks pregnant and think they're 7 weeks pregnant. This is not uncommon. So the danger of mailing drugs to women on the basis of a conversation on the phone or filling out a form and just putting them, it's just mortal danger for them.
Well,
And
I've heard so many stories too about like pro-life centers who have managed to get pills even though there was no pregnant woman, because they did a telehealth thing. And
it's very simple, very simple.
yeah.
Even here in Florida, many, many hundreds of, I've been doing a little research on it. I can't swear to my numbers, but it makes sense to me. There are many hundreds of abortions being performed in Florida through telehealth because there are actors on the internet who aren't, they're not even, I mean, they're completely in the black market on the internet selling these drugs. There is a black market for these drugs. You got your doctor in New York that you mentioned, who's doing this, sending pills to Louisiana, and maybe he's a perfectly normal practitioner in New York, but he's violating the laws of Louisiana. But then you also have a black market section of the of abortion pill distribution. It just gets worse and worse. Like the more you dig, the more shocked you are that there's so much ugliness in the world. And the fact that we live in this culture where we've all sort of accepted, not you and I maybe, but in general, people have sort of accepted that babies are going to, lots and lots and lots of hundreds of thousands of babies are going to be conceived and they must be done away with. And people are, they're comfortable with that. They like to tinker around the edges of that. Because to go at the center of that problem would mean that there has to be sexual responsibility, and nobody wants sexual responsibility.
Or when you start to actually look and talk and encounter there are lots of difficult situations, and it's easier to eliminate the baby than it is to find housing for a woman or to help her get a job or help her learn English or babysit for her while she takes her final exams, or all of the things that makes it possible for a mother to be a mother. It is a judgment of our culture that we don't want to walk with women. We want, the good thing is that I always look at the polling that has consistently said that if you're pro-choice, you you're not waking up in the morning wanting to see that there are more abortions.
No,
You
absolutely
want
not.
to know that a woman in a difficult situation has options. But those options don't have to be killing your baby. Those
Mhm.
options can include adoption. Those options can include people rallying around her so that it is possible to help this child and the mother flourish. And also, we want to raise young men who step up to the plate. Yes, okay, we understand pregnancy happens, people do things, and there's a baby. And
Mhm.
good people do this all the time, right? This is not what you raise your children to do, but it happens. And so, all right, what are we going to do now? We're going to deal with reality as it is. And we're going to either give this child to a couple that is struggling with infertility and would like nothing more in the world than to raise a child, or you know what? We're going to reach out to people who love us and we love, and we're going to find the resources that we need to make this happen. And the last thing I'd love to talk to you about super briefly is, it's not enough to just defund Planned Parenthood. Great thing to do. I'm going to celebrate that it happens, but it is a challenge to us to make sure that not only now we know that Planned Parenthood and the report that just came out confirms this yet again. They're not doing the actual women's health care that everybody thinks they're doing in
No.
most clinics. Um, we need to not only make sure that there are pregnancy centers and community health centers, and the Charlotte Lozier Institute just did a survey of community health centers showing the full expanse of women's health care that they actually provide.
Mhm.
We need to make sure not only they exist and they're supported, whether they're private or they get public funding, but people know about them. Young people know about them. So before a woman is even pregnant, she's at Heart of Christ Clinic in Detroit, which does all women's healthcare. There are a lot of girls who have wound up in Planned Parenthood because they wanted to get their well women healthcare check. Sometimes Planned Parenthood did it, sometimes they didn't, but that's how they just knew the name Planned Parenthood and they assumed and they went there, and that's how they wound up there for the abortion. So we may need to make sure that girls have somewhere to go before they're even pregnant, so that's where they go when they are pregnant. um,
Mhm.
so in Florida you have this Hope program, which is about bolstering civil society, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I think Florida on so many levels has is a real model for the country. And I mean, we could talk about it for hours, but yeah,
Except
this
I
is one
never
that,
want to be in Florida in the summertime, but that's another story.
oh, it gets
You're,
really hot in New York. I remember being in New York
yeah,
in the
yeah,
summer,
but your
being
humidity,
being a
there's
little
something
shocked.
different about it. But anyway,
But yeah, the Hope program is just another wonderful initiative. What's your favorite part about it?
well, just the simple idea, and we should have a conversation about this another time. But the whole idea that the government is recognizing that actually the important work happens, faith-based organizations, private organizations, in in conjunction with support from the government,
Mhm.
and certainly the government not being an obstacle, right? When we go back and think about the debate over the Health and Human Services mandate during Obamacare, during the Obama administration, um, you know, who winds up at the Supreme Court? The Little Sisters of the Poor. The Little Sisters of the Poor care for the elderly poor. I've been at some of their houses. They're beautiful places, where they're doing basic health care, and there's like a section that's the medical section for people who really, essentially need a hospital. And then there's you have your little apartment, and you have your community, and you have your medical help nearby, to varying degrees based on need. And these are the people who make the country work, and help us avoid situations like we saw during COVID, where so many people had been warehoused, and the government, especially in New York, made decisions that were deadly for people. But that's not the situation in like a Little Sisters of the Poorhouse. And at the end of the day, and I'm kind of a broken record on this, we pro-lifers are, and you're not an example of this because I know you do so much volunteer work, both trying to help young people understand who they are and what's possible for them, making Catholic sexual morality practical and even desirable, you know, and also the pregnancy help work that you do. But so many people who are pro-life, sometimes they're content with, okay, I voted the right way,
Mm-hmm.
or yeah, I voted the right way. And even maybe I went to the March for Life. I live in DC or Virginia, and I went to the March for Life this year. No, what's the maternity home near you? What's the pregnancy care center? What are options, low income housing options? If a young person came to us, if somebody came to us, would we know what to tell them? Are we supporting, these efforts? Are we contributing, not only financially, but in other ways? But the big one is, do people know they can come to us? Because so often we're the last people would want a young person who, if a young couple, your cousin's kids get pregnant, and are they going to Gracie? She's pro-life. She's going to judge me. Oh, she's the Catholic one, oh, she's holy.
The church
No,
lady. They call me the church lady.
the church lady. So would you go to the church lady? No, often
Well,
they
this
we have to make sure that we'll go to the church lady.
This hope program in Florida, I think what it's aiming for is this wonderful American characteristic, which is that Americans are tremendously, and I think this is true compared to the rest of the world, Americans are tremendously hands-on, help your neighbor people.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to other nationalities, to other countries, and when you visit other countries, you see it. In many other countries, there's this idea, well, there's like a cradle to grave government assistance, and the government's going to take care of all that, so people stay in their lane. In America, we have a really, really robust idea of charity, of helping our neighbor, of being involved. The Rotary Club and the Knights of Columbus, and this is ingrained in our American mentality, in our American DNA, and it's much better than government.
Yeah.
So government can help out. Government can make sure that things are being done properly, that you don't have weird outliers, but let's harness the hearts of Americans, because it's heart to heart that really good things happen. Really good things where people are really lifted up out of the mire of whatever their terrible condition is. That's going to happen heart to heart, one heart to one heart. And we have to potentiate that. We have to potentiate that for Americans. And I think that's what this HOPE program does.
Yes, sometimes I think of the DMV just because everyone's been there. I don't even drive, and I've been to the DMV. But like, the DMV isn't going to love you. Government can't love you. And so we want to support those faith-based community efforts that are full of people who love. And I think part of why I'm attracted to this HOPE program is it recognizes the fact that while everything you just said is true, there's also been a breakdown in community.
Oh, there has.
And so it's the government helping to restore what, yes, frankly, the government needs. I mean, go back to Tocqueville, noticing like, oh, this Democratic Republic is working because it's got all of the civil society, all the mediating institutions, right? And so, yeah, there's something really healthy about what's going on in Florida, even if I want to wait until winter to go there.
Well, don't wait too long.
Well, everyone else from New York goes down there then. Well, I love the harnessing the generosity of people, and that seems like a good note to end on, because I do think there's something about, going back to Pope Leo the 14th, or Bob. There's something about the goodness that it is there, that our people are attracted to, and I know we both hope and pray that it causes a renewal, not just in Catholicism, people returning, people coming, but to faith more generally, but also just to bring out the best in people, which you acknowledge that's part of what has been happening, just by Rome being a news story. And
Well,
so
I've gotten really good vibes from the whole thing, and I'm feeling really hopeful and very positive about the future on lots of levels, but not less because of we have a wonderful new pope, and lots of hearts are going to open, and yeah, we have to pray that all the pieces fall into place and our society becomes better and better, and more people can live better lives and flourish, which is, I think, the common good. Everything has to be always oriented to the common good.
Well, there is, before we started recording, we were talking about how the Holy Spirit always has a plan that's better than our plan. And this is kind of inside baseball Catholicism, I guess, but it's a Jubilee year, the Jubilee of Hope. And nobody humanly could have planned the attention, the focus, and yeah, the renewal that's happening, not because of some pilgrimage to Rome and walking through a holy door, which is part of the pilgrimage experience, but just by saying goodbye to one pope, welcoming a new pope, and all that's coming from that. So, Grazie Christie, thank you so much. Where do we follow you on Twitter?
G Christie MD.
And I'm at Kathryn Lopez, and I retweet you frequently. And thank you for retweeting me. And Gracie, you're a great writer. You're a great observer, and you're a great contributor to many good things. And I'm just delighted that you made time to talk with me and us, everyone who's watching. And I look forward to doing this again.
Always such a pleasure, my
Yeah,
friend.
thank you, Gracie.